Hello everyone, welcome back to my class. This is Rumana Ali. I hope you all are doing well. In the last sessions, we have discussed all the different topics that are present in the chapter breathing and exchange of gases. Now in today's class, let us discuss about the last topic of our chapter, that is disorders of respiratory system. Disorders of respiratory systems are many, but in your syllabus, some of the disorders are given. So we are going to discuss that only. Before we discuss about the diseases or the disorders that are related to our respiratory system, firstly we need to understand the mechanism of normal infection. What is going to happen when the normal infection takes place in our body? So when we understand the mechanism of that normal infection, then we can understand the mechanism of the disorders that are related to our respiratory system. So disorders of respiratory system are many. Out of that, asthma, emphysema and pneumonia, these three are mostly asked and are very important. So as I told you that we need to understand the mechanism of normal infection first. So what is going to happen in the normal infection? If a person gets normal infection, then what are the things that are going to happen in his or her body? Firstly, we are going to see the diagram of any organ where the infection is going to happen. So when we do the transverse section of any organ, we can see a wall is located at the posterior side of every organ that is present in the human body. So this is a wall and here is an organ. Now when any foreign particle, for example bacteria, so when bacteria enters into the wall of the organ, firstly it reaches the wall of the organ, then slowly it enters into the organ of our body and start damaging it, start eating that organ. Why the bacteria enters into our body? To stay and also to get the food. A lot of food is present in our body for the bacteria. That is the reason they are going to enter in our body and they attack the different organs of our body for their purpose. So once the bacteria enter into the wall of any organ and when it enters into the organ, then it spreads and it goes anywhere in the organ. When it reaches the mast cell of any organ, mast cells are also a kind of cell. Mast cell is also a kind of cell. So when the bacteria reaches the mast cell, for example this one is our bacteria. When this bacteria reaches the mast cell and when it sits on the mast cell for damaging it or for its own purpose, then what happens? This mast cell can sense that some foreign material comes into our body and it is damaging our organ. So it becomes active. Mast cell becomes active and it secretes one important chemical. The name of that chemical is histamine. So it secretes a chemical called histamine. Histamine is an important chemical of our body that acts as both vasodilator, bronchiconstrictor. Vasodilation means whenever any foreign particle or any bacteria comes and attached to the surface of the mast cell, it releases one chemical named histamine. By the release of this chemical, the fluid which is present in the cells of the organ, that fluid also releases, and along with the fluid, some WBC is also released, white blood cells are also released, and these white blood cells helps in making or helps in preventing growth of this bacteria. This process is called as vasodilation. That means the release of fluid takes place, along with the fluid WBC are also released. Histamine acts as a vasodilator. It also acts as a bronchiconstrictor. Here, constrictor means anything that gets constricted. If the contraction would happen in any muscle or in any organ, then the constriction of that organ or of that particular tissue takes place. So here, chemical releases, the fluid would also come out along with the WBC, and after the release of the fluid, what happens? The wall of this organ, it becomes swollen. Inflammation can be seen in the walls of the different organs. This is what we call as a constrictor. Now we'll take an example of a respiratory disorder, that is asthma. As soon as the inflammation in the walls of the organ takes place, this wall, it swells, and this fluid which is released, it will be there in the organ. Vasodilation takes place and also the bronchi constrictor. It acts as both vasodilator and bronchi constrictor. Now we'll talk about one respiratory disorder, that is asthma. In normal conditions, we can inhale and exhale properly, but if a person is suffering from asthma, then he or she cannot be able to breathe in a proper manner. They exhale carbon dioxide a lot of time. They cannot breathe in a proper manner. That breathlessness causes asthma. So what infection happens in the disorder asthma? Let us see. Firstly, we need to understand that asthma is a disorder that is caused due to the hypersensitivity of our immune system. If a person's immune system is hypersensitive, then these kind of allergic reactions would occur in our body. Asthma is an allergic disorder. It is an allergy which is caused due to the hypersensitivity of our immune system. Now, take the transverse section of our trachea and bronchi. So, when we do the cross section or transverse section of the bronchi and trachea, we can see this kind of structure. Here, the wall of trachea is present, the wall of bronchi is also present. The inner lining of the trachea can be seen. Here in the normal infection, we have studied that bacteria enters into the organ. But in some conditions, no microorganisms or no foreign particles are going to enter into our body. Some of the materials which are not at all harmful for our body, like pollen grains or dust particles, if they enter into the trachea, if they enter into our bronchi, then the immune system of our body, which is very, very hypersensitive. So, the mast cells which are present here, they are very sensitive. If the pollen enters into the wall of the trachea and then enter into the inner linings of the trachea and attaches to the mast cell, then the mast cell would unable to recognize that whether the foreign particle is harmful or not. It just sense that some or the other foreign material comes into the trachea and it attaches onto the mast cell. So now it starts reacting. The function of mast cell is to release a chemical, that is histamine. So the pollen, when it attaches onto the mast cell, when it reaches the mast cell, histamine is released by the mast cell. Histamine acts as both vasodilator and bronchi constrictor. Now what happened? The wall of the trachea and the bronchi swollen. As soon as the inflammation of tracheal wall and bronchial wall takes place, the inner linings, the airways through which the air can enter into the alveoli of our lungs, it becomes constricted. That gets decreases. This air space of the trachea and the bronchi gets decreases. Vasodilator means a release of fluid takes place like this, right? Now, bronchi constrictor means walls become enlarged, inflammation, swelling of the wall takes place, due to which the air space of the trachea and bronchi becomes too short that the person cannot inhale and exhale the air easily, cannot inhale and exhale the air in a proper manner. So this is how the breathlessness or the difficulty in breathing occurs due to this allergic reaction. Let us recall this asthma. So asthma is a respiratory disorder. It is an allergy and it is due to the hypersensitivity immune system. If any person's immune system is hypersensitive, it is sensing small things that are going into our body which are not at all harmful for us. So, for example, if a pollen or if a dust particle enters into the trachea, then when it reaches the mast cell becomes active. It releases a chemical called histamine which acts as vasodilator and bronchi constrictor. As the histamine is vasodilator, it releases a fluid, and as it is a bronchi constrictor, the walls of the trachea and the bronchi becomes inflamed, it becomes swollen, due to which the air space gets decreases and the person cannot breathe normally. This is what happens in the condition called asthma. From the starting of this chapter, we are learning that some air sacs are present in our lungs that are functional units that helps in the gaseous exchange. They are nothing but our alveoli. So alveoli are the air sacs that are present in our lungs, helps in carrying out the process of gaseous exchange. Now we are going to discuss about the another respiratory disorder, that is emphysema. In this disorder, the alveoli, the air sacs of our lungs, it gets damaged and even it lost their elasticity due to this disorder. So in this disorder, these two things are going to happen. The alveoli, which plays a major role, it is only getting damaged. The walls of the alveoli gets damaged and it also lost its elasticity. So in the condition emphysema, what happens? Let us see. This one is our normal alveolus. If you see a normal alveolus, then it functions normally. During inhalation, the expansion of the wall, alveolar wall takes place. Due to the expansion of alveolar wall, we can take the oxygen in. This is called as inhalation, right? If we have to breathe out, if we have to remove the carbon dioxide out of our body, then the relaxation of the alveolar wall takes place. Due to the relaxation of alveolar wall, the carbon dioxide can move out of our alveolus. This is what happens during normal inhalation and exhalation when our alveolus is functioning normally. But this elasticity, it is working like a rubber, expanding then relaxing, expanding, relaxing. This enables us to carry out the processes of inhalation and exhalation. This is due to the elasticity of our alveolus. But if that elasticity get lost, then what happens? It leads to a disorder, that is emphysema. So in the condition emphysema, it lost its elasticity. The elasticity gets damaged. The elasticity of our alveolus gets damaged, and due to this, it cannot breathe out and it cannot breathe in properly. The oxygen cannot be taken up by the alveolus and the carbon dioxide cannot be removed by the alveolus as it gets constricted. The elasticity of alveolus is due to the presence of some proteins, and that proteins are called as proteases. So at the wall of the alveolus, some proteins are present that are called as proteases. These proteins enables the alveolus to take the air in and to remove it out. But if that proteins would not present at the wall of the alveolus, then the alveolus would not function properly. It cannot show its function in a normal way. So this proteases becomes anti-protease. If a person smokes too much, if a person chews tobacco, and if a person is exposed to the dust for a longer duration, and also if a person is working in some factories, due to the exposure of that smoke also, it leads to a disorder called emphysema. So in this disorder, the proteases gets damaged. Due to the absence of these proteases, due to the rupturing of these proteases, alveolus cannot function properly. It cannot expand and it cannot relaxes normally. So this is what happens in the condition emphysema. And the symptoms of emphysema includes coughing, sneezing, chest tightness, secretion of mucus, extra mucus gets secreted. All these are the different symptoms of the lung disorder called emphysema. If a person is suffering from emphysema, he should avoid smoking. He should avoid exposure to different dust particles or to different things that leads to air pollution. So by this, by changing his or her lifestyle, they can get rid of the lung disorder called emphysema. So basically in emphysema, the proteins that helps in maintaining the elasticity of alveolus, they gets damaged. Due to this, the alveolus cannot show its elasticity and it cannot perform the normal function. The next lung disorder is pneumonia. This is the disorder in which fluid gets filled in our alveolus. And this disorder is caused by a bacteria called Streptococcus pneumonia. So, Streptococcus pneumonia is a bacteria. It causes a lung disorder called pneumonia. So, pneumonia is a bacterial infection, whereas asthma is an allergic reaction which causes due to the hypersensitivity of the immune system, and pneumonia is our bacterial infection which is caused by a bacteria named Streptococcus pneumonia. In this condition, what happens? This is our alveolus. When the bacteria enters into the alveolus, this is our bacteria. When it enters into the alveolus, it releases some fluid in this way. The fluid gets filled into the alveolar region. As the fluid gets filled into the alveolus, the oxygen which reaches the alveolus, it cannot enter into the alveolus. It cannot fully enter into the alveolus, and the alveolus cannot carry out the process of gaseous exchange. This is what happened in the condition pneumonia. So, it is due to the bacterial infection. Whenever the bacteria enters into the alveolus of a person, that bacteria releases some fluid, and when that fluid gets filled up in the alveolar region or in the alveolus cannot carry out the process of gaseous exchange, and this leads to a disorder, pneumonia. And pneumonia is a disorder where a person can suffer from shortness of breath, fever, chest pain. All these are the different symptoms that can be seen in a patient suffering from a disorder called pneumonia. So, these are the three different respiratory disorders. Asthma is an allergic reaction, emphysema is loss of elasticity and the damage that occurs to the walls of the alveolus, and in the pneumonia, bacterial infection takes place. Due to the accumulation of fluid released by the bacteria, alveoli cannot exchange the gases. It cannot takes the oxygen and it cannot gives out the carbon dioxide. This is what happens, due to which the person can suffer from shortness of breath, and breathing process gets disturbed due to this bacterial infection. So, these are some of the important respiratory disorders. So, here the chapter breathing and exchange of gases ends. I hope it's clear to you. I'll be back with a new chapter. Goodbye.